Hi. As I said just before, my name is Mark Boaz. I'm going to try and keep it quite short as possible, and hopefully have a few questions after. Feel free to just interrupt at any time. First of all, I wanted to say thanks to Pietro and Ben for putting this conference together. I wouldn't have believed that it was actually possible to get so many like-minded people in the same room. When I first started looking at time, text, and audio and video, there didn't seem to be that much happening, and now it really seems like it's really moving, so it's great to see. So I'm just going to tell a quick story, hopefully, about Hyperaudio, which has kind of been a passion of mine for the last 7 years almost, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about it amongst ourselves. It started off with the very first Mozilla festival, which was called Drumbeat, back in 2011, I think. And I wanted to be part of it, and I wanted to be part of the science fair, so I put together a really quick demo that I thought might be interested, and luckily I was selected. And so I demoed this at the science fair, and I always like to kind of go through it and see if it still works, so I'm just hopefully going to use a little bit of time to show you a very early demo. Let's see if this works. Okay, at the time, I didn't even know about transcription or alignment or anything like that, so I made my own sort of manual aligner, and it basically goes like this. Now let me see if I can get this right. Hold on. Sync mode, yeah. Sorry, the volume wasn't great there. I didn't realize it. But sorry.
Is that the sound settings? Make sure you upgrade on HD.
Okay.
All of the beauty of it is in sound.
Yeah. Thanks very much. HDMI. Okay, so let's try playback mode. Just
That works.
Yeah.
I am happy to join with you today in
And then we also
what will
have
go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
So that was the start of my adventure with time, text, and audio. And it got me into the science fair, which was great. I met a load of cool people like Ben, and it's kind of gone from there. Okay. Then, actually with Ben, and somebody called Henrik Molk, and so I should make it clear that I did not come up with the term Hyperaudio. Henrik Molk did, and he worked with us on this project with Radiolab, which was 2011, and he had a similar vision to me. Ben brought us together to work on it. Henrik was a journalist, and so he came from a slightly different perspective, and we made this, sorry, I don't think the link's there, but you can look it up, and I'll give you the link at the end, demo that used SoundCloud as a content management system for comments and images that moved in time to the audio, and it also had an interactive transcript, which we'll come to later, that allowed you to click on the words and go straight to that part of the audio. So what I realized when I was doing this, that there was some value here. It wasn't just about having fun and making things that were fun. By adding time into text to make it, oh, that should say audio, you make it accessible, because people who maybe cannot hear can still consume audio by looking and clicking. You make it searchable, because search engines like text, they don't really like audio, and that's also discoverable. Searchable is more, you can look through, find things very easily, and shareable. You can give time codes to people and point people to that exact point that you want them to go to. So what the dream became was, as hypertext is to text, I wanted to make Hyperaudio to audio. So it just felt like it was taking things a little bit further forward. But then I realized that in order to do this, we needed to have time transcripts. And how do we do that? I don't want to sit there pressing the space button through every single transcript that I have. So you have to look into how to do this, and there's various ways. And one way that's now becoming very viable is to use speech-to-text algorithms that generally do a good job, depending on the quality of the audio and the accent, of giving you a time transcript back. And much to my surprise and joy, I realized that most of the services will give you the timings as well as the transcript as a byproduct of the transcription algorithm. So that's one way of doing it, but then you need to correct it. Later on, I founded a business that was all about correcting machine-generated speech-to-text. Or you can do and use like Elliot's tool, O-Transcribe, and actually type it in yourself. Elliot's tool makes it very easy for you to do that. And then you can use an aligner that will then align that transcript, and then you don't really need to correct it. It generally gets it right each time. Or you can use a mixture of both. Now, Hyperaudio as a service is kind of a misnomer, because most of the stuff on it is video. In fact, all of the stuff on the Hyperaudio service, which is just kind of a proof of concept for our technology, is video. But what I always say is that because video usually has an audio track, then it's equally applicable to that. And generally we're now finding that video is a big part of why people are transcribing stuff. So I was an Open News Fellow. I worked with Al Jazeera in Doha, and this was the time of the US presidential debates. And they wanted to try out this technology. So we got some stuff transcribed, and what we tried out was the ability to kind of search. So this allowed us to do an interactive that you could search for a particular word, and it would tell you how much it occurred in a certain transcript and who said it, which was interesting to see. And we kind of took that further on the State of the Union speech, and we searched various different transcripts to do that. And in here we had actually a small hidden function that would allow you to play back. I haven't got time for it now, but every time somebody said a particular word, each word has a timing, so we knew when to start and stop, and we could just kind of go through and play the same word over and over again. And it was great to hear Mitt Romney just say economy for about 30 seconds without stopping in various different ways. Later on I might be able to find that and we can listen to it. So while I was doing all this, I kind of came up with an idea that I thought might be interesting. And the idea was that since we already had the text and we had the timings to audio and video, we could make it easier to edit by using the text as a base for editing. So we came up with this idea of what we called a Hyperaudio pad that allowed you to kind of drag text from one side to the other side of the screen and build up your media that way, which we found made it very much easier to create unique audio and video pieces and remixes. Now I'm going to give a very quick demo because I realise we're pushed for time. So this is the Hyperaudio pad, and here you have a classic interactive transcript, which just means that you can click on the words.
I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator.
And go to it. You can see whereabouts you are in the text by which parts of the text are actually darkened.
Who you are and what you're thinking.
But crucially, what you can do here is select any part, and I'm just doing this randomly, and start to build up your media here on the right-hand side. We have little tools for splitting things up, and then you can drag things away.
You're exposed to a lot.
And then you can produce media from various different sources and put things together. Now, if I just do this very quickly and find something like probably US politics, just to prove the concept that you can actually put multiple things in, and then it will
systems administrator for these sort of intelligence.
The candidates or
jump from one to the other.
audience is taken
We
up.
added to that the ability to sort of fade. Hold on, I'm just getting the hang of the trackpad between pieces.
For these sort of
The
intelligence.
candidates or their aides. The audience is taken about.
And and even sort of trim. At this point, we only stored the timing for each word. We didn't have the duration. And that's where the trim came in very handy, just to take a bit off the end or add to the end of each section. You can also put titles in and background music. Okay. We actually got funded to do this by the Knight Foundation, pitching this idea, and I worked with Dan and Lorien, and this was the kind of a start of a working relationship in this kind of area. So the Hyperaudio pad, as you saw, it allowed you to create audio and video pieces really easily. It was an online tool. You could add music, all the stuff that I said there. You could make remixes, but you left the source intact. It was non-destructive editing, right? Because we were just pointing to start and stop points in different parts of the video, which is really important. Later on, I had the pleasure of talking to Ted Nelson at the Internet Archive, and he was very excited about this because it was very similar to his vision for hypertext. And so this has made me very, very excited that we could possibly have a new way of representing audio and video and referencing the primary source material. And this idea also of remixing the remixes, right? That because it's non-destructive, you can actually expand the remix. You can, not every remix doesn't necessarily get smaller, it can also get larger. And so the applications could be for somebody to put a prototype together of a quick cut of some piece of video or audio that they're doing, sort of quick editing, for people that just want to distribute their content as links to audio and video and don't necessarily need a finished piece. Audio and video essays, media literacy, for me was a very interesting subject. So you can imagine students, instead of having a written essay, given source material and asked to mix things together to produce their own take on things, and also maybe do their own talking head, transcribe that and insert that. That's something that we're kind of looking into right now. And just kind of summaries of media. You know, you might have a conference talk, you might have gone on too long like me, and you want to just cut it down to the salient points. That could work as well. And in fact, we've set up a version of Hyperaudio that will be part of this conference that we hope to put all the talks on, that people can then use to create their own sort of versions or whatever. Or just sort of casual mashups and art. I don't know if anybody's heard of Cassette Boy. In the UK, is quite famous. Uses small clips to make sort of parody videos, usually political. So all of that. This slide I'm not really going to dwell on, but we created a whole sort of ecosystem around Hyperaudio, which in the end is all open source. We're totally looking for contributors. It's very loosely coupled. The different parts allowed you to create transcripts, convert transcripts, clean them up, publish them, and mix them. How am I doing for time, Pietro? All right. Couple of minutes? So this brought us to something called interactive transcripts. So I just got about 3 slides on it, which is just this idea of coupling media, every piece of spoken word media, with these words that can be clicked on and shared and all that sort of thing. We are now creating a library called Hyperaudio Lite that allows anybody to embed interactive transcripts into the pages that they want to. And this helps, in a way, people share audio and video, because this has been a problem, that text can often go viral, but audio and video often doesn't. So how do we do this? And now we're starting to see people working on this problem. So you can imagine the idea that you find a piece of transcript and there's an interesting bit of audio, and you just highlight the text and share it, a bit like Medium, but for audio and video. This is what the promise of an interactive transcript does for you. The idea that then that clip goes into a social media feed and maybe gets shared by many people is quite a powerful one, and people like WNYC and Audiogram and have made Audiogram, This American Life made Shortcut that do things like this, and they represent audio in a sort of visual way that can be consumed, crucially, silently. So often when you're scrolling through your feed on Facebook or Twitter, you don't want the audio, but you might still want to consume it. And we see people kind of pioneering this. I mean, a couple of them, AJ Plus and Channel 4, have been doing this for a while now. And I find myself consuming video now without the audio on. So that's it from me. There's some more stuff here. As I said, we went on to found another company that I have now left and come back to sort of Hyperaudio, which was Trint, which allowed the corrections. I created a big blog post on how I got to create Trint, and that will give you more detail about Hyperaudio. That's kind of me online, and That's it, really. Thanks. I don't know if we've got time for questions or... Are there any questions?
Where is it at right now? I couldn't quite get that from the scope of your
Yeah.
talk. So is it something that we could use and play with and try to fool around with now, or is it something that you're going to try to roll out and plan for? Where is it?
So the question is, where are we now with Hyperaudio? I think that's a great question. We're at the point where we're just having fun creating open source software that everybody can use. So you can go to GitHub/Hyperaudio and find us. What we're trying to do is we're working with people like the Turkle Radio Archive, which is part of WFMT, to produce interactive transcripts that people can remix and use in different ways. And then feedback anything we do into the open source library that other people can then use. So the idea is that we can work on things that we're passionate about, but sustain the sort of open source ecosystem underneath it. Any other questions? Okay, if anybody wants a demo of anything, I know I went through it really, really quickly, but if anybody wants a demo of anything that I've talked about or wants some clarification, just wants to talk to me about it, please don't be shy about coming over and talking to me. Okay, thanks again.